Stop dying to be liked. In 3 seconds, your value flickers, depending on applause, on likes, on approval. But the Stoics taught us a different currency, inner worth, not public praise. When you live to please, you lose the only thing that matters, yourself. This video will expose the quiet poisons of people-pleasing and show you the Stoic path back to dignity, purpose, and freedom. 1. The inner focus. Returning to yourself. There is a quiet, invisible exhaustion that comes from living for the approval of others. It doesn't break you in one moment. It erodes you, slowly, silently, day after day. You tell yourself you're just being kind. You're just being helpful. You don't want to upset anyone, disappoint anyone, or give anyone a reason to pull away from you. So you say yes when your heart is screaming no. You agree when your soul disagrees. You smile while something inside you slowly dies. This is not kindness. This is self-abandonment. People-pleasing isn't generosity. It is fear dressed up as virtue. Fear of rejection, fear of judgment, fear of not being enough unless someone else validates your existence. The Stoics warned us about this long ago. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "It is not that others hold us back, but that we hold ourselves back." When you shape yourself to fit what others want, you are holding yourself away from your own life. You betray your truth to maintain an image, a mask, because you think that being accepted is safer than being yourself. But look closely at the cost when you constantly check how others see you. When your peace depends on someone else's reaction. When your worth rises and falls based on whether someone approves. You have handed your life over. You are no longer living. You are performing. Your nervous system becomes tense. Your self-image becomes fragile. Even your kindness becomes calculated, not real. You start to wonder, do they love me or the version of me I created for them? And if they only love the version you perform, then no one is actually loving you. The Stoics taught that all peace begins within. It is not found in the eyes of others. It is found in the alignment between what you say and what you actually feel, what you do, and what you truly believe. The question is not, do they approve of me? The question is, am I honest with myself? Because when your inner world is abandoned, your outer world becomes chaos. This is why people-pleasing leads to resentment. You give more than you have, then grow angry when others don't return it. But how could they return something they never asked for? You traded your own needs for their comfort, then blame them for accepting the deal. It's not their fault. It's not your fault. It is simply a pattern, learned, repeated, and now ready to be broken. The turning point is recognizing that your value does not rise or fall with opinion, that your peace is not a negotiation, that choosing yourself is not cruelty, it is clarity. Inner focus means returning home, choosing stillness over noise, choosing honesty over performance, choosing alignment over approval. It does not mean being cold. It means being real. It means giving when giving is true, not when giving is fear. When you stop living to be liked, something remarkable happens. You finally start living. And this is where the journey continues. Because once you begin returning to yourself, you will face a world full of voices telling you what you should be, should do, should feel. Which leads us to the next truth. Silence is how you reclaim your power when the world gets loud. Let's talk about the noise of other people's opinions and how Stoicism teaches you to rise above it. 2. The noise of opinions. When you begin to return to yourself, something unusual happens. The world grows louder. Suddenly, every voice around you has something to say about your choices. What you should do, who you should be, how you should live, what you should tolerate. And if you are not careful, you will start shaping your life around their noise again. People often fear judgment more than failure. They fear being misunderstood, criticized, or talked about. So they shrink, they soften, they hold back. Not because their truth is wrong, but because the crowd is loud. But the Stoics were very familiar with this noise. Epictetus wrote, "If you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid. To grow, you must be willing to be misunderstood. To evolve, you must accept that some people will not approve. To be free, you must stop explaining yourself to everyone, because opinions are just echoes, reflections of others' fears, insecurities, and expectations. They are not truth. They are not your compass. They are not your identity. The truth is, people will judge you no matter what you do. If you speak, you will be analyzed. If you remain silent, they will invent stories. If you succeed, they will say you think too highly of yourself. If you fail, they will say they knew it all along. No matter how carefully you live, someone will always have something to say. But remember this, their voice only becomes your prison if you hand them the key. The Stoic path is not silence because you are weak. It is silence because you refuse to be controlled. When someone tries to provoke you, you don't need to argue. When someone criticizes you unfairly, you don't need to defend yourself. When someone tries to pull you into drama, you don't need to participate. Your silence says, "I do not dance for anyone's approval anymore." This silence is not emptiness. It is discipline. It is self-possession. It is mastery. But something profound happens when you stop reacting. You start seeing more clearly. You begin to recognize which voices are based in wisdom and which are based in insecurity. You begin to see how much of your life has been shaped not by your values, but by your fear of being disliked. And the moment you see that clearly, the performance begins to fall apart. You start to realize you've always had the power to walk away from the stage. However, once you step out of the noise, a deeper truth emerges. Many people are not pleasing others because they love them, but because they are desperately afraid of being abandoned. This is where the real wound lies. Under people-pleasing is not kindness. It is the fear of being left behind, which brings us to the next part of this journey, one of the most painful illusions we hold, the belief that acceptance is safety. In the next section, we will explore the emotional trap of seeking approval and how it slowly erases the self. 3. The trap of acceptance. There's a moment in every people-pleaser's life where they look in the mirror and realize they don't recognize the person looking back, not because they have changed, but because they have disappeared. This is the silent tragedy of living for approval. You become a performance, a curated version of yourself designed to keep the peace, avoid disappointment, and maintain connection at any cost. You smile when you're exhausted. You say, "It's fine," when your chest is tight and your mind is screaming. You agree with things that don't align with who you are, not because you lack strength, but because you fear loss. You fear that if you stop giving, they'll stop staying. If you stop saying yes, someone will walk away. If you show your real thoughts, someone will decide you're too difficult, too emotional, too much. So you trade authenticity for acceptance. And you think it's love. But deep down, there is a wound that grows. A quiet resentment, a slow burning exhaustion, a constant tension between who you are and who you pretend to be. The Stoics understood this conflict clearly. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The approval of others is a poor substitute for peace." And Seneca said, "What you think of yourself is much more important than what others think of you." When you live for others, you are never at home within yourself. You become a guest in your own life, because every time you choose their comfort over your truth, you teach yourself that your needs are secondary, your voice is optional, your soul is negotiable. This is not kindness, this is abandonment of the self, and the cost is enormous. You begin to lose your desires, your boundaries, your direction. You forget what you love, what you believe, what you want. You forget how to say no. You forget how to choose you. You may not realize it at first, but the body remembers. The body remembers every time you silenced yourself to be liked. It stores the exhaustion, the disappointment, the quiet grief. This is why so many kind people carry so much sadness, because their kindness was never free. It was always a bargain. The freedom you're seeking is not in being loved by others. It is in being true to yourself, even if that truth costs you acceptance. And it will cost you. When you stop performing, some people will leave, but those who leave were never really with you. They were with the version of you that kept them comfortable. Let them go. This is where your real life begins. But when you start choosing yourself, another challenge appears. The guilt of saying no. The guilt of protecting your energy. The guilt of drawing boundaries. The guilt of refusing to overgive. So next, we move to something critical on the Stoic path: how to prioritize yourself without feeling guilty. Because dignity is not selfishness, and boundaries are not cruelty. They are the framework of self-respect. 4. The mirror of solitude. There comes a moment in every man's life when silence becomes the only honest companion he is left. Not the silence of boredom, but the silence that reveals. When the noise of the world fades, when no one is calling, when no one is waiting, when there is no audience to perform for, you meet yourself. And most men are not prepared for that encounter, because in solitude there are no masks, no excuses, no charming smiles to escape into, no validation to distract from the truth. A man alone sees himself clearly, perhaps for the first time. He sees his fears, uncloaked and wordless. He sees his wounds, unhidden by pride. He sees how much of his life was shaped not by strength, but by avoidance. This is why most men rush back into relationships, not out of love, but out of fear of sitting with themselves. They fear the mirror, but the man who remains. The man who chooses solitude rather than running from it. That is the man who begins to transform, because solitude forces a man to confront the real battle, the one that happens within. At first, it is uncomfortable, restlessness, old regrets echoing like footsteps in an empty hallway, memories replaying their unfinished sentences, voices of past failures whispering through the quiet. But if he stays, if he endures the uneasiness without reaching for distraction, the noise inside begins to soften, the storms calm, and gradually he begins to hear something else, his own voice, not the voice shaped by society or family or lovers or expectations, but the voice beneath all of that, his true voice, the voice that says, "This is who I am. This is what I value. This is what I will no longer tolerate. This is where I am going. This is where direction is born. This is where integrity is reforged. This is where the man you were steps aside for the man you are becoming." And that is why solitude is not loneliness. Solitude is the forge. The man who fears being alone is a slave to connection. But the man who masters being alone becomes unshakable, because once a man has built himself in silence, no one can take him from himself again. When he returns to the world, he does not return to seek approval, but to offer presence. He does not return to be completed, but to choose what aligns with him. This is the difference between a man who needs love and a man who chooses love. One grasps desperately, the other stands firmly. Now we move to the next truth, one that many men overlook. The stronger a man becomes in solitude, the more carefully he must guard what he allows back into his life. 5. Guarding the gates of the soul. When a man has rebuilt himself in silence, there is a shift, a quiet, almost invisible transformation. He no longer seeks attention, yet people notice him. He no longer asks for respect, yet others feel it when he walks into a room. He no longer chases love, yet love becomes something he can now choose, not cling to. But this is the stage where many men fall again, because strength attracts, light attracts. A man with a centered heart and a disciplined mind is magnetic, especially to those who are lost, restless, or unstable. People will be drawn to him, not because they love him, but because they want what his presence gives them: comfort, direction, security, validation, a reflection of who they wish they were. And if he is not careful, he will let them in, not out of desire, not out of alignment, but out of empathy, out of softness, out of the feeling that he can help them. This is how strong men fall, not through weakness, but through the heart that refuses to close the door. But a man must learn to guard his peace with the same discipline he used to earn it. Not everyone deserves access to his inner world. Not everyone deserves a seat at his table. Not everyone deserves the warmth of the fire he spent years burning inside himself. This is the difference between a boy and a man. A boy lets everyone in because he fears being alone. A man chooses carefully because he respects what he has built. To guard your peace is not arrogance. It is responsibility. To say no is not cruel. It is self-respect. To walk away from what feels unstable, chaotic, unclear, or emotionally immature is not avoidance. It is wisdom, because the woman you choose, the friends you keep, the ideas you consume, the habits you repeat, all become architecture of your inner world. You do not let chaos near the foundation you built with pain, reflection, and solitude. You protect it. Remember this: not every presence deserves your energy. Not every hand deserves to touch your heart. Not every smile deserves your trust. You choose now, not from hunger, not from emptiness, not from need, but from clarity, because a man who has rebuilt himself does not look for someone to fill him. He looks for someone who can stand beside him, equal, aligned, steady. 6. The quiet power that needs no audience. There comes a moment when silence stops being something you practice and becomes something you are. Not forced, not rehearsed, not strategic, just natural, because you no longer feel the need to prove anything. You no longer feel the need to be seen, to be understood, to be recognized, or to be praised. Your validation is internal now. Your identity is rooted inside your chest, not hanging in the hands of others. This is when a man becomes truly powerful, when he can walk into a room and speak with nothing but his presence, when he can lead without raising his voice, when he can influence without demanding attention. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The best answer to anger is silence." But silence is not just the answer to anger, it is the answer to ego, to insecurity, to the restless urge to prove oneself. When you master silence, you master yourself. Because silence is not empty, it is full of understanding. Silence is not passive, it is grounded awareness. Silence is not withdrawal, it is choosing where your energy goes. And when a man reaches this place, conversations change. He no longer overshares. He no longer tries to impress. He no longer speaks just to fill the air. His words become fewer, and each one carries weight. He listens more. He observes more. He senses more than he reacts. He sees people's intentions, not their words. Their patterns, not their promises. Their character, not their charm. This is a man who becomes impossible to manipulate, because he no longer seeks external approval. He can walk away from arguments, from validation traps, from emotional games, not out of fear, but out of clarity. He understands something most people never learn. Silence is the language of strength. People who are loud are often uncertain. People who boast are often insecure. People who argue desperately are often fragile inside. But the one who can remain calm, still, grounded, that is the man others cannot shake. His peace becomes intimidating. His presence becomes undeniable. His restraint becomes his shield. He does not need to convince others of who he is. They feel it. And here is the irony. Once you stop trying to be respected, you become respected. Once you stop trying to be desired, you become desirable. Once you stop trying to be understood, you become unforgettable, because people sense authenticity. They sense depth. They sense someone who has walked through fire and did not come out begging for applause. 7. Fearless authenticity, the courage to be seen as you are. There comes a moment in every man's journey when he stands face to face with himself, not the self others shaped, applauded, or expected, but the self that has been quietly waiting beneath every compromise, every forced smile, every yes that should have been a no. This moment is uncomfortable, not dramatic, not loud, just honest. It feels like waking up in a life you don't fully recognize, surrounded by decisions you made not out of desire, but out of fear. Fear of disapproval, fear of disappointing others, fear of being misunderstood, fear of not being chosen. So you shrink. You soften your edges. You speak more gently than your truth requires. You stay silent when your heart is burning to speak. You agree, so you won't be questioned. You conform, so you won't be abandoned. And it works, temporarily. People like the version of you that doesn't disturb them. But inside, something starts to ache. A quiet, pulsing awareness. I have betrayed myself to be accepted. This is the wound of the pleasing man. Not that others reject him, but that he rejects himself over and over again for the comfort of others. The Stoics warned us of this very suffering. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "It is not worth your while to let your mind be enslaved by the opinion of others. To be authentic, truly authentic, is not to be loud or aggressive or confrontational. It is simply to stop abandoning yourself. It is to speak when something matters. It is to say no when your boundaries are crossed. It is to admit when you are hurt instead of pretending you feel nothing. It is to allow your presence to be honest, even if it makes others uneasy. Because peace is not found in being liked. Peace is found in being real. But authenticity comes at a cost. When you stop performing, some relationships will crumble because they were never built on truth, only convenience. Some people will pull away because the version of you they benefited from is gone. Some circles will no longer welcome you because you no longer bend to belong. It will feel like loss, but it is not loss. It is clearing. The wrong people leave when the real you arrives. The right ones won't need your silence, your softness, or your self-erasure to stay. There is a steadiness that comes when a man no longer negotiates with his identity. He stops explaining himself. He stops justifying his boundaries. He stops apologizing for his depth. He stops proving his worth. He simply lives it. This is fearless authenticity, not loud, not performed, but embodied. And when a man reaches this place, something profound shifts. He no longer fears being alone because he finally has himself. He no longer fears rejection because he refuses to reject his own soul. He no longer fears judgment because he knows his value is not up for debate. From here, connection changes, relationships change. The world around him changes, not because he demands it, but because his being now carries weight. 8. The freedom from pleasing, saying no, without apology. When a man first stops performing for acceptance, something unexpected happens. Silence appears, space appears. A strange lightness mixed with fear appears, because for the first time there is no autopilot yes. There is no scrambling to please. There is no sprinting to fill silence with validation. There is simply choice, and choice is terrifying. You begin to realize how many parts of your life were built on compliance, not desire. How many friendships were maintained through self-betrayal. How many relationships survived only because you kept shrinking to fit inside them. The moment you start saying no, without explanation, is the moment you reclaim your self-respect. But the mind resists. The conditioning runs deep. From childhood, many of us were trained. Be agreeable. Don't cause trouble. Don't upset anyone. Approval equals safety, so every time you consider saying no, guilt rises like a wave. A guilt that isn't truth, but memory. The Stoics understood this. Epictetus taught, if you wish to be happy, make it your concern only with what is within your control. Your boundaries are within your control. Other people's reactions are not. Yet we try to manage both. And that is where suffering grows. You say yes to avoid disappointment. You say yes to avoid distance. You say yes to avoid being misunderstood. But each yes is a thread pulled from your own soul, and slowly the fabric of who you are unravels. People-pleasing is not kindness. It is self-abandonment disguised as generosity. And there comes a day when your body can't carry the weight of that anymore. So you say, gently, firmly, no, no, I won't carry the emotional load for everyone. No, I won't sacrifice my peace to avoid your discomfort. No, I won't keep pretending to be smaller so you can feel larger. No, not to reject others, but to return to myself. But saying no is only the first step. The deeper transformation comes when you learn to say no without explanation. Not cold, not harsh, just clear, because explanations are often apologies in disguise, and you do not owe an apology for choosing yourself. When you stop justifying your boundaries, the world reveals itself. Some will feel threatened because your compliance benefited them. Some will be offended because your silence unmasks their expectations. Some will disappear because your presence is no longer easy to shape. Let them go. There is a profound stillness that arrives when you realize you were never born to be convenient. Your purpose is not to be agreeable, but to be true. And when you stop trying to please, something extraordinary happens. You become selective, intentional, precise with your energy. The people who remain are the ones who respect you, the ones who hear your no and don't run, the ones who don't need your self-erasure to feel secure. You stop chasing connection and begin choosing it. You stop proving your worth and begin embodying it. And slowly, freedom is no longer a concept. It becomes the atmosphere you breathe. 9. The silence of a mature man is not escape. When a man matures, his silence changes in meaning. Many people misunderstand it. They think he's avoiding conflict, hiding, or suppressing something he's afraid to confront. But the silence of a man who has endured life's storms is not the silence of fear. It is the silence of someone who has chosen to observe rather than react, to evaluate rather than rush, to remain anchored rather than be pulled into chaos. In his younger years, he used to respond impulsively. Anger meant raising his voice. Hurt meant arguing back. Disrespect meant proving himself at any cost. He believed loudness was strength, that speaking more meant he was in control. But time, the coldest and most honest teacher, revealed the truth. Noise is often the language of the insecure. And the urge to prove yourself comes from not yet knowing who you are. Now his silence holds weight. In the quiet, he sees more clearly. He can tell which words are worth responding to and which were spoken only out of temporary emotion. He can distinguish between those who truly value him and those who only seek to drain his energy. He recognizes that not every disturbance deserves his reaction and not every situation requires his presence. Most importantly, he learns that he does not need to respond to everything. Just like a still lake reflects the sky, his mind reflects the truth only when it is calm. When he was younger, he lived like a rushing river, always crashing, pushing, proving, striving. Now he is the lake, steady, deep, and clear. No explanation needed, no raised voice required. His silence speaks for him. His silence is not surrender. His silence is a strength refined by experience. Others chase attention. He guards his presence. Others seek validation. He seeks alignment with himself. And that changes everything. His silence exposes shallow conversations. It disarms manipulators. It disrupts the emotional chaos of others. It protects his dignity in every situation because he finally understands. The more a man matures, the less he needs to explain himself. He lives to understand himself, not to be understood by everyone else. A weak man is silent because he is afraid. But a strong man is silent because he understands. So what leads a man to such quiet strength? Not the simple passing of time, but the willingness to face himself deeply and honestly. And that leads us to part 10, where we learn how a man dives inward, identifying the roots of his emotions instead of being ruled by them. 10. Turning inward, the courage to face oneself. Silence becomes powerful only when a man dares to look inward, because the truth is this: most men are afraid of their own reflection, not the one in the mirror, but the one inside their mind. To sit with yourself, without distraction, without noise, without escape, is one of the hardest things a man can do. The world teaches us to stay busy, to keep moving, to drown ourselves in work, entertainment, conversations, or meaningless noise, just to avoid hearing the voice within. But a man who masters silence learns to confront that voice directly. He sits alone with his thoughts, not to judge them, but to understand them. He asks questions most people run away from. Why did that comment bother me so much? Why did I feel the need to prove myself there? Why am I afraid of being misunderstood? Why do I react so quickly when my dignity feels threatened? These questions are not comfortable. They are not gentle. They cut. They expose. They demand honesty. But true growth requires honesty, especially with oneself. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts." So, a mature man inspects his thoughts carefully, not to suppress them, but to purify them. He watches his emotions rise. He watches them fall. He studies the roots, not just the symptoms. He realizes anger is rarely about the moment itself. It is about stored wounds never addressed. Insecurity is not about how others see him. It is about how he has yet to see himself clearly. Attachment is not love. It's fear of being alone. This is the work many avoid, because to see yourself clearly is to confront your shadow, the part of you that carries your failures, your fears, your impulses, your regrets. But a strong man does not run from the shadow. He integrates it. He learns from it. He becomes whole. His silence is now guided by understanding, not suppression. He no longer reacts. He responds. He no longer absorbs chaos. He filters it. He no longer chases external control. He cultivates inner control. And through this process, something subtle yet profound begins to happen. His presence deepens. People feel it before they understand it. He walks into a room, and without saying a word, others sense the steadiness in him, a quiet strength that can only come from a man who has faced himself and remained unshaken. But this transformation leads to the next realization. A man must not only confront himself, he must also learn to let go. Which brings us to part 11, where silence becomes a gateway to releasing what no longer serves him: pride, attachment, fear, and the weight of the past. 11. The strength to let go. Eventually, a man who has learned to sit with himself must face a new challenge. He must learn to release. Because understanding yourself is one thing, but liberating yourself from what no longer serves you is another. Letting go is not passive. It is not surrender. It is not weakness. Letting go is the ultimate expression of strength, the courage to stop carrying what is crushing you. We are taught to hold on to relationships, hold on to labels, hold on to identities that no longer fit, hold on to versions of ourselves that should have been retired long ago. But there comes a moment, quiet, subtle, unmistakable, when something inside says, "This is costing me more than it gives." And when that moment arrives, a man has two choices: release or decay. A man who fears letting go becomes a prisoner of what he clings to. A man who learns to let go becomes free. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "Ask yourself, does this add to my character or does it subtract from it?" So a man begins to evaluate his life through this lens. Does this relationship honor my spirit or does it drain it? Does this habit sharpen my mind or does it dull it? Does this pursuit elevate my purpose or does it distract me from it? He stops romanticizing suffering that is self-inflicted. He stops confusing endurance with wisdom. He stops mistaking familiarity for loyalty, because loyalty to others means nothing. If you have abandoned yourself in the process, letting go can feel like grief. And in a way, it is. You mourn the version of you who didn't know better. You mourn the comfort of old patterns, even when they were harmful. You mourn the story you tried to force into existence. But grief is not the end of the story. Grief is the doorway to rebirth. When a man lets go, space is created. Space for clarity, space for peace, space for self-respect, space for alignment. And slowly, almost imperceptibly, a new kind of strength begins to form. Not the loud, performative strength of proving something to the world, but the quiet, unshakable strength of a man who knows what he stands for. His life becomes intentional. His boundaries become silent but undeniable. His presence becomes firm but compassionate. And with this new strength, he realizes something deeply Stoic. Freedom is not gained by adding more, but by releasing what is unnecessary, which leads us into part 12, where this transformation becomes more than internal. It becomes a way of living, walking, choosing, and becoming. A life guided not by fear, not by the past, and not by the expectations of others, but by inner peace. 12. The transformation. Transformation is rarely loud. It does not announce itself with fireworks or applause. It begins quietly, in the small choices no one sees. It begins the day a man stops betraying himself, when he no longer says yes while his chest tightens, when he no longer swallows his voice just to be accepted, when he no longer gives his energy to those who only take. The rebirth of a man is not dramatic. It is steady. It is deliberate. It is earned. He learns that peace is a discipline, self-respect is a practice, boundaries are an act of love, not ego. He realizes that loneliness is not a failure, but the place where his true identity returns to him. He discovers that purpose is not found outside. It is uncovered by removing what distracts him from himself. This is the essence of Stoicism, to stand solid in who you are, even when the world pulls you in every direction. Seneca wrote, "He who is not content with what he has would not be content with what he would like to have." So the man no longer chases validation. He no longer begs for attention. He no longer shapes himself to fit into spaces that do not honor him. Instead, he builds himself. Quietly, patiently, relentlessly, he begins living from the inside outward. And it changes everything. His posture shifts, calm, grounded. His voice lowers, steady, unforced. His eyes sharpen as aware, but no longer desperate. His steps become intentional, slow, but unstoppable. People feel it, not because he tries to show it, but because authenticity radiates without effort. This is what real transformation looks like. Not louder, but deeper. Not harder, but wiser. Not more, but enough. And in this stillness, he asks himself one final question. Not from fear, not from insecurity, but from clarity. What kind of man am I becoming? And for the first time, the answer comes with peace, not doubt. Because now he walks a path built from his own values, not the expectations of the world. He no longer seeks permission to exist. He is. There comes a moment in every man's life when he realizes he has only two choices: continue living as a mirror, reflecting what others want from him, or become the flame, burning from his own truth. The world will always have opinions. People will always try to shape you, but your life is the one thing they do not get to own. So walk forward with quiet certainty. Choose yourself, not to reject others, but to return to your center. Honor your boundaries. Speak your truth without apology. Let solitude refine you. Let purpose anchor you. Because the man who respects himself is the man who cannot be controlled. If this message spoke to something deep inside you, then stay with me.